And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Thursday, July 1st. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain. Many of the stories viewed here can be found at our website, IndianCountryNews.com. And here is one of the news stories in an interview for today from Window Rock, Arizona. So we're going to go here with this. Researchers say they found a 10,000-year-old hunting weapon in melting ice near Yellowstone National Park. The University of Colorado announced a discovery this week. Research associate Craig Lee said the spear-like wooden dart has been frozen in an ice sheet for 10,000 years and became bowed as the ice melted. It's made of birch and looks like a bent tree branch. Lee says increased global temperatures are causing glaciers and ice fields to melt, releasing artifacts as well as plant material and animal carcasses. Later this summer, Lee and student researchers plan to visit Glacier National Park in Montana. They'll be working with tribes there to find and protect artifacts that may have been freed from melting ice. And today we go to Navajo Times correspondent Marley Shebala reporting from Window Rock, Arizona, where elections, redistricting, down-districting, primaries, and all kinds of other court issues are making for an interesting 2010 election.
Came up. Marley Shebala, you're in Window Rock, Arizona today on the Navajo Nation. Tell us a little bit about what the Navajo Times is covering this week down there. What are the issues?
Well, the biggest one is the election. On August 3rd, there's supposed to be the primary election. And this is the election for the new Navajo Nation president and also for the council delegates. But instead of 88, it'll be for 24. And there was a lengthy battle, legal battle, which has made it difficult to have absentee ballots out. And the election board has really been concerned about making sure that the registered Navajo voters and the military get to vote. So tomorrow there's a plan for them to ask the Navajo Supreme Court to postpone the primary election from August 3rd to possibly August 24th or August 31st, which would then allow for absentee voting to begin on July 26th and then end on August 2nd. Otherwise, there would be no absentee voting.
Okay.
And then also, for the first time, as part of the special election that reduced the council to 8 to 24 and created line item veto authority for the president used his line item veto authority for the first time last week. The council had passed this huge legislation that allocated $7.6 million. It started with $3 million, and then they kept adding on stuff. And the president slashed it by $5.6 million. But now the council delegate who sponsored the legislation, Young Jeff Tom, is saying we're going to override it. And the president is saying you can't override it. So if they go into court, it could delay the elections again.
You said that the president had vetoed a provision in the budget for the first time using that line item veto for the first time. The council says they're going to override it, and the president says there isn't an override provision to do that. Is that going to be another legal scramble?
Oh, yeah, it will be. And right now, the president is in court before the Supreme Court over his challenge that he's qualified for a third term, but the Navajo election law says, only 2 terms for a president.
Right.
The council has unlimited terms.
2 consecutive terms, right? So he could sit one out and come back under the law, the way it reads.
Yeah, and that's happened.
And so far, they've ruled against him at least at 2 levels, one at a hearing level, or is the hearing level where he's at now?
Well, he filed for candidacy. The election office disqualified him. He went to the Office of Hearings and Appeal, and they agreed with the hearing officer, and he immediately appealed to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has set a hearing date of July 9th. They're trying to move these along as quickly as possible.
Okay. Is there any more challenges to the redistricting from 88 to 24 delegates?
The council had made some rumblings about doing that, but so far they haven't filed anything.
Does it seem like right now the nation is moving toward an election that would encompass 24 representatives from those districts rather than 88? Is that the direction everything appears to be moving in?
Oh, yeah. As soon as the Supreme Court said, you have an election for 24 delegates and no longer for 88 and do it now, they started doing it. And so it's moving along. And there haven't been any challenges. So they're trying to get the election going for 24, but you keep having these other issues with the president's election. And so, there are just legal challenges.
Well, it's as a non-Navajo, that's one of the things I notice is that you have all these legal challenges, but it almost seems, number one, it's a reporter's dream because you got plenty to cover. Number two, it is the separation of powers at work for the Navajo Nation, and some of that is less than, 20 years old in some cases?
Oh, yeah, that's another thing that I think a lot of people looking, and even some of our own people don't realize, is that we're a young government and that this is not our government, and it's one we're trying to get used to, and it's also one that the elders, the traditional people, are also trying to tell the leaders you need to incorporate the Navajo way of life, thinking, the fundamental law. And that's what the Supreme Court used in making its decisions.
Okay, well, listen, we're going to try to follow those elections, the challenges to the ability of the president to run another election, the issue of absentee ballots, the redistricting. And you've got 88 people. Are all of them running? But they would be running against each other. There would be incumbents running against incumbents in some cases.
Oh, there is. There is. And that's what is really interesting. Plus, a lot of the people who are running were former council delegates from other former councils. And then you have people who are working for President Shirley's office who are running. And so there's, without, it's almost like you have these strange kind of party lines that are being created. Former council delegates and the incumbents and then Shirley's group. So it's going to be interesting to see who gets in power.
Well, they always say, isn't there a saying like politics makes strange bedfellows or something like that?
Well, it's really strange. And people that don't understand the history, the political history on the Navajo Reservation, or I think on any Indian reservation, and I think that our people really need to know that, and our schools need to teach that so that the young people understand their own government, because they're taught state governments and federal government, but not their own government, especially the government we had before the one that was imposed upon us.
Okay, good. What's going on with sports on the Navajo Nation? Anything? There's always seems to be something going on. Can you tell me something real quick in the last minute we have here?
Oh yeah, the July 4th, is around the corner, and so instead of having the usual July 4th huge rodeo, professional cowboy rodeo association coming in, people are going to be going up to Courte, and it is going to be focused on local athletes, rodeo athletes, and other tribal athletes that will come in. So, in a way, you're not going to see the professional cowboys, but you are going to see, our own homegrown athletes who are just as professional.
Oh, that's good. Well, we'll keep an eye, and maybe if we check back with you next week, you can tell us who comes out on top of that one.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to.
We'll keep in touch with you.
There are some young ones that are coming up,
Cool. We'll keep in touch with you, Marley. Thanks for joining with us this afternoon.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank you all for joining with us. Come back again soon. Miigwech.